Hi everybody, I hope that you're blessed and that you're doing well. In this video, I would like to discuss the topic of forgiveness. I believe in the religious community, in the church, that there's a lot of misconception around this topic. And hopefully what I share in this video will shed some light to the area of forgiveness, of course, from a biblical perspective. Before I take a deep dive into this, if you have not had the opportunity to do so, become a YouTube subscriber to my channel. Just go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. Of course, as always, I thank you for watching and I thank you for your support. Now let's get back to our topic at hand, forgiveness. The thing about it is that when I think about forgiveness and how it's handled specifically in the church, it's kind of like glossed over. It's handled like it's an event. And forgiveness is not an event, it's a process. If you have been abused, if you have been traumatized, if you have been victimized, if you have been betrayed, these things you don't get over overnight. It may take years to heal from going through something traumatic. It may take years to heal from certain wounds and from what people have done to you. So it's not an event, it's a process and it takes time. So if you are watching this and you have had difficulty forgiving people who have hurt you, who have caused you great pain, if it's a person or if it's a group of people, if it's persons or certain people throughout your life, if you're having a hard time with it, what I don't want you to do, I don't want you to beat yourself up about it. Because sometimes in a religious community, we approach forgiveness like it's an easy thing. Forgiveness is not an easy thing to do. And just because you're having difficulty forgiving someone does not make you a bad person. You know what it makes you? A person. It makes you a person. So don't beat yourself up about it. However, if you are to heal, if you want to heal, and if you want to continue to have a strong relationship with God and to grow spiritually, it's important that you are on the path of forgiveness and that you are able to heal and to get over it and to get through it. And all of that is possible. But the thing about it is that forgiveness is not really about the offender and a person who hurt you and harmed you. Forgiveness is really between you and God. Forgiveness is between you and God. In Matthew 6:14, Jesus says, if we don't forgive others, God is not going to forgive us. So right there, his implication is our relationship with God. So basically, when we hold on to unforgiveness, what it does, it will harden your heart and it will put a callus on your soul and it will basically put a break between your relationship with God, and it will hinder you and it will stop you from growing spiritually, and it will hurt and harm your spiritual relationship with God and with others. So we can't go around with these festering wounds. We have to heal. So it's really not between you and the person who has hurt you. And what we have seen recently, we have seen people who have feel the need to go to courthouses and hug and kiss their enemies and people who have killed family members and go out with bullhorns telling their offenders and people who have hurt and harmed them greatly that they forgive them. That, I'm not sure where that comes from, but that is not biblical. And it's not a Christian principle. It's not what Jesus taught. He didn't tell us to go out and to confess to our offenders that we forgive them. So what we need to understand is that the onus is not on us for the confession, and I'll get into that later, what confession is and how we should handle it when it comes to forgiveness. The onus is not on the person who's been hurt and harmed to go to the person who offended them and confess that they forgive them. It's not about you and the offender. It's about you and God, because even if the offender apologized with tears in his eyes and with snot in his nose and crying that they're sorry, they could leave after all of that drama and you still feel bad. So the reason why it's between us and God is because the healing for your wounds, the healing for that pain, the healing for that trauma, that's going to come from God. It's not going to come from a confession or an apology to those who hurt you. So if we get into a right place, and if we turn it over to God, then we're able to heal. Sometimes, oftentimes, not sometimes, but oftentimes when I want a clearer understanding of something that Jesus said or something in the Bible, what I usually do, I go back to the original text. I'll go to open my Hebrew Bible or my Greek Bible. So in the New Testament is Greek, and in the Old Testament is Hebrew. So in the Greek, and the word that Jesus used, and the word that's used for forgive in the Greek is aphiemi. So, and basically what the word aphiemi means, it means to lay aside, to leave alone, to omit, to turn away, to look away, to go. So basically, when Jesus is saying forgive, he means to leave the situation alone. You don't have to go confess your forgiveness to anyone. Turn it over to God. It should be in God's hands now, what has happened to you. It's not for anyone else. It's for God to repair. And it's not for us to go exacting revenge on people, or because the Lord said vengeance is his. God will pay people back. As a matter of fact, not even pay people back. When we do something, whether it's good or bad, there's always a consequence attached to that. That's laws that's built in the universe. So it's going to happen. So nobody gets away with anything, right? So when we are hurt, when we are harmed, what we want justice. But if we let God handle it, and we do it God's way, God will heal you and God will give you justice. But you have to do it his way. And you have to understand that it is a process. It's a process, and it's going to take time. And I just want to encourage those who are watching to go through that process of laying it aside, aphiemi, laying it aside, and turning it over to God. Don't hold on to what has happened to you. Don't hold on to the pain. Don't hold on to the trauma. It's not for you. It's not for us to bear these burdens that we go through in life. So understand that it's not an event, that it is a process. And I wish the church would understand that a bit more. We gloss over it, and we come up with, the Christian jargon, and I call it Christianese, let go and let God. And, there's a lot of cliche things that we say in the church. And it's like, if you've been abused by your parents, you just can't let that go. If you've been raped, you can't let that go. So it takes time to heal from things like that. And what we also need to understand about forgiveness is that forgiveness is a spiritual act. We need supernatural help from God to forgive others, and oftentimes also to forgive ourselves. So when we invite God into the process, and when we make him our focus in the process of forgiveness, we'll get our healing. The second thing I want to bring up is that oftentimes in the church I see, and it's sometimes maybe unintentionally taught, that reconciliation comes with forgiveness. And actually I see it as two separate things. So you may be able to forgive a person, but that relationship may not be able to be salvaged or reconciled. So if you're dealing with a toxic person, if you're dealing with a person who lacks empathy, if you're dealing with a person who is dangerous, it's probably not safe or good for you, or good for you psychologically or spiritually, to reconcile a relationship. And sometimes, when things happen and the trust is just completely broken, and you can't reconcile it. Sometimes that happens. But also sometimes is that if you properly go through the process of forgiveness, and the offender and the person who's been harmed are able to come together, there are times where, there could be reconciliation, forgiveness is there, and the relationship could actually end up stronger. But don't think that reconciliation is automatic, because it is not. I've been recently in a situation where I hurt someone, and I was sorry. I repented to God, and I confess to the person, and I'll go through those steps in a minute. That's part of the reconciliation steps. And the person did not accept my apology. The person didn't choose to reconcile with me. And you know what? And this is how I know I've grown spiritually. You know what? I was fine with it. And it's their choice and their right. So if you're watching this and you have been the offender, look at it like this. We sort of like lose rights. You don't have the right to tell someone how much pain they're in or to measure another person's pain. So what could be a level 2 to you as far as the offense could be a level 10 to somebody else. So sometimes we don't know how deeply we hurt people. And when we are the offenders, we don't get the right to kind of like measure another person's pain. Nobody could no one can measure your pain or tell you how much pain you're in. Your pain is your pain. And if it hurts, it hurts. Right? So you kind of like, you lose rights. And also just know when you do certain things, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that the relationship could be broken. That's the consequence. You know, that's the consequence. And the person has the right not to reconcile with you, you know, and also you lose the right to make an excuse. So oftentimes, you know, people will try to make excuses for their behavior. You know, they'll say, I'm sorry, but no, there's no but after. You don't try to, condone your actions, right? Or sometimes, you know, I've heard this and I can't stand when I hear it. Well, you know, people be like, well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. That is not, that is not an apology. That is not actually, that's actually not acceptable. You know, when I hear people say that, I'm like, you could take that and stick it someplace. That is not an apology. Or, you know, a very vague, I'm sorry. You know, people need to know that you fully acknowledge that what you have done, and you have to name it. You have to name it and be specific. You know, I'm sorry that I hurt you, and that you know, I did A, B, and C, and D to you. You know, so you have to be very specific with that. So while we're on the topic of reconciliation, there are a few steps to it, and I want to share that with you. And the first thing is that in order for you to reconcile with someone, is that the offender needs to be sorry. They have to be convicted about what they did. I mean, some people will hurt you and not feel sorry at all. Actually, some people will hurt you and they'll be happy they hurt you. And if they get the opportunity, they'll try to hurt you again. So the person has to be convicted about what they did. And it's not our job to try to make the person feel convicted, right? They have to feel it within themselves about what they have done to you. The second thing is that they have to repent. So they have to repent to God. They have to, you know, confess it to God and you know, turn away from it. The third thing is that they have to confess it. And I think I just went over that. They have to specifically confess what they have done to you, right? Nothing vague. They have to confess it. And, you know, like the last thing is that there has to be a change in their behavior. Like, people could say sorry 1,000 times, but then continue to do what they usually do or continue to hurt you. They're not sorry. When a person is really sorry about something that they're doing to you, or some harm that they're causing you, there's going to be a change in their behavior. So you have to see a change in behavior over time, right? So in the book of Matthew, in chapter 18, verse 21, Peter is like, he says to Jesus, you know, if my brother or my sister offends me, I'm paraphrasing, should I forgive them up to 7 times? You know, if they sinned against me, and Jesus is like, no, try 70 times 7. And then he goes into the parable of the unmerciful servant. If you want to read it, it's Matthew 18, verses 22 through 35. So he goes into the parable, and basically what Jesus meant by that is that if we are to have if you are going to be in a healthy relationship with another human being, you have to be able to forgive. There's no way around it. Healthy relationships require forgiveness, because you have two imperfect people, or you have imperfect people in a group. Somebody's going to hurt somebody. You're going to hurt somebody. They're going to hurt you. You're going to offend somebody. They're going to offend you. So you have to be willing to forgive if you want a healthy relationship. And there's so many relationships in marriages where there's like a fence on top of a fence, and there's no forgiveness there. And the two people just walking around with like open wounds, and they're not healing. And the thing we need to know about forgiveness is that forgiveness invites healing. So if you want to heal, and if you want to repair a relationship, you have to forgive. So those are the things I wanted to share with you, that forgiveness is not an event, it's a process, and it takes time. Don't beat yourself up, but make sure you invite God into the process so you can get there, and that you can get healthy and you can be whole again. Reconciliation is not automatic. You're not required to reconcile with anyone, although it'd be good if you can. But if someone is toxic, if someone is not a safe person, it's probably not a good idea to reconcile with them. So those are the things that I wanted to share with you regarding forgiveness. And I want whoever's watching this, I want you to be healthy. I want you to be whole. I want your relationships to be healed. I want you to be healed from the inside out. And I want you to be blessed. And I want you to just draw closer to God. Once again, I thank you for watching this video. I thank you for your support, and I will see you in the next one.